Hey, what's up, YouTube? Other half 1993 here. Since I've been doing a lot of deck profiles lately, and on the same deck twice for that matter, I figured I might as well do something that's a little different. This is really, I guess this is kind of an FAQ kind of thing. I think that's what I'll end up calling it. But basically, I'm just going to explain like why certain cards are being used or why you should use them, etc., etc. And one card that's really big right now, as you can tell from the title, is Royal Decree. Um, I've had some people, or I've heard some people ask, why is Decree being used so often right now? And really, I already kind of explained this in the latest scrap deck profile, but I heard someone say, and I can somewhat agree with this, mostly agree with this, that right now, any deck that doesn't have trap support, themed trap support, like, again, as I explained in the last video, Blackwings have Icarus, Glides have War Chariot, Sabers have Gotham Z-Call. So any deck that doesn't have themed trap support like that should be main Decree instead of a regular trap lineup. I kind of agree with that, but I kind of don't at the same time because basically, unless you do have that themed trap support, your trap lineup is gonna shut down one of two things. You can either use Decree and shut down other players' traps, or you'll use a more standard lineup that, in my opinion, works more against summons because you'll have the two bottomless, the two warning, solemn judgment, torrential. So in that sense, you're really going to end up picking and choosing between, well, do I want to stop traps or do I want to stop summons? Now here's the thing. It really, in my opinion, it really does depend on the deck. Like for example, in scraps, I much prefer to stop traps because once I get Scrap Dragon out, monsters really aren't that big of an issue. Or even better, if I get Scrap Twin Dragon out, between the two of them, monsters aren't that big of an issue, and you really want Decree to protect them. But on the other hand, you have decks like Quick Draw, where there's not going to be as many traps that stop them. Like, for example, yeah, Solemn Warning would hurt, but Bottomless doesn't really do a whole lot against them. Torrential, they don't really care that much about. Mirror Force isn't really that much of an issue either, etc., etc. So they're probably going to want to go for a more how do you say, like just a standard trap lineup with bottomlesses and solemn warnings. So that's something you really got to consider this format is what you want your trap lineup to protect you against, and you just really got to consider what your deck fears more, other opponents' monsters or traps. Now, if you are going to use Decrees, one thing I would, let's see here, a couple things if you're going to use Decrees. MSTs, if you have room for them, great, you should keep them in. But if you really want to use other spells and you're already maining Decrees, don't hesitate to move MST to the side deck because it probably would, with Decrees, it's really not as useful. So there's that for you. The other card you should really consider maining if you are, well, cards I guess you should consider maining if you're going to main Decrees are possibly some Effect Veilers. Because, again, I already covered this sort of in the scrap deck profile, but if you do have Decrees, you're not going to have that much protection from monsters like Debris Dragon or, say, Blizzard or Caius or just monsters like that. You're not going to have protection that Solemn Warning would offer. So Effect Veiler is really your next best bet to stop those kind of monsters. Like I said, if you're running Decrees, well, not too bad of an idea to, be maining some Effect Veilers. And then in my humble opinion, if you are maining Decrees, you should be using at least 2, but you really should be using 3 Book of Moon. Book of Moon, in a lot of ways, is like those anti-summon traps, like Bottomless in particular. It really can be a lot like them, because you can just book the monster and then run it over next turn. Or you can book to stop an effect, or stop them from synchro summoning, which again, Bottomless and maybe even Solemn Warning might help you with. So Three Book of Moon I think is um, definitely should be I don't know about a staple, but highly recommended if you're using a playset of decrees. And then finally, the other card I would suggest running in conjunction with these is a Cold Wave. Um, even if you have one or two extra traps in addition to decrees, you're really not going to have that much of a backfield to worry about. So Cold Wave is a pretty viable option, unless you've got just a ton of spells you want to play on that turn. Then really, there's no reason you shouldn't be using Cold Wave. But even then, like for example, the scrap deck, I use a ton of spells. I think I have, I have what 18 monsters in these three. So what is that? 19? I think 19 or 20 spells. But even then, Cold Wave is still good because I'm mostly relying on monster effects. So I guess that's really all I have to say about Decree. And obviously, I guess you could kind of take the decree advice and work in the opposite if you're using Psalm warnings and bottomlesses. Hang on a second. Well, never mind. I was gonna get out some Psalm warnings and bottomlesses, but that's not really gonna help. It'll just add a visual. Maybe I will. Anyway, like I was saying, yeah, if you're using warnings and bottomless, then it's probably not. Main Book of Moons aren't as big of a deal. You probably want to avoid using a. Oh God, why am I blanking on the name? Cold Wave. Duh. You probably want to avoid using Cold Wave just because obviously that'll kind of conflict with you setting up your back rows. The side deck is also something to consider when choosing your trap lineup because, as you may have noticed in the scrap deck profile, I obviously don't slide any traps because that would just conflict too much with the decrees. And even if I were to slide traps, I'd probably have to take out at least one or two, if not all three decrees for those traps, and then you're just looking at an inconsistent trap lineup, so it really just wouldn't work out. Just as an example, Trap Hole is a card I really like sided this format. Really good against Glads, Blackwings, and Sabers. I really like this for those matchups. But obviously, since I'm making decrees, I can't really side them as much as I want to. Let's see here. 7-tool. Well, yeah, Trap Stun too. 7 tools of the Bandit and Trap Stun are also traps to consider if you're not making decrees. I would probably put these in most decks that aren't main decree, one of each of these, or at least one or the other. Just because even if you are, it's just like even though you're writing decrees, you should still use Book of Moon for or summon protection. Well, even if you're running the summon protection, bottomless and warning, you should still have some trap protection. So trap stun, 7 tools, one or the other, or both, wouldn't be such a bad idea. So yeah, I don't know. This you could argue that this all came about because of the banning of Heavy Storm. Kind of made the back row run a little rampant, but what's done is done, and you can't really do much about it. So, but yeah, like I was saying, if you're not running, oh geez. You're not running a decree. I'm sorry I'm blanking out on these card names, but if you're not running decrees, like for example, this was my, I think this is my quick draw trap lineup, and I know this was my decree lineup, or my old scrap lineup, sort of, but this is probably more what a standard trap lineup would look like in this format right now. And as you can see, between these 5 and then to an extent Solemn, it's really geared more towards stopping summons. But like I was saying, this is the standard lineup, and then you really should be using 1 or 2, if not both of these. So so yeah, when picking your deck, a trap lineup really is something to consider. If it is negotiable, obviously, like I said, for Blackwings and Glads and Sabres, they have themed trap support, so they're going to be running this stuff in addition to their themed trap support. But I guess that's really all I've got to say. This is it for the I guess it's some kind of strategy section. I meant to make this video about decrees, but then I just went off about trap lineups. So I guess that's all I got for now. Let's see the other half 1993. Peace out.